Hi, this is Savannah,
And this is Brian from the Dorky Diva Show,
and you're listening to Star Wars.
the best place for below average Star Wars.
In a world where people need 80s and 90s movie reviews, two regular Geordies combine forces to bring you the Brother to Brother 80s and 90s movie review podcast. Check them out on Twitter, YouTube, and all decent podcast vendors.
Welcome to Star Wars, best place for below average Star Wars.
Hello there, and welcome to the Star Wars Show, the best place for below average Star Wars. And we are back with a very special episode today. It is obviously February 7th, and it is Star Wars Podcast Day. You might be wondering why there is a Star Wars Podcast Day and why it is on February the 7th. And the reason is it is the 24th anniversary of Jedi Talk, the very first Star Wars related podcast, which premiered back on February 7th in 1999. So obviously, I just want to give, the pioneers who started the Star Wars podcasting journey, adventures, do we take our hats off to you guys. And here we are, Star Wars, 24 years later, making podcasts talking about Star Wars as well as sort of everyone else that does it. But yeah, that is the reason why. I'm obviously joined today by Jason Hondo Ling, fellow co-host. Jason, how are you?
Hi, Pete. Yeah, really pleased to be here with you. And crazy, isn't it? All this time that they've been doing Star Wars podcasts, and now we get to join in with the fun.
We do indeed. Now, I didn't have the internet back in 1999. I was very much like a 10-year-old at the time. Wasn't really doing much internet until I was about 13, 14. And even then I wasn't looking for podcasts. But obviously obviously we've been podcasting together for probably over a year now. The Star Wars podcast itself's been going for, just about 3 years. But is there any other Star Wars podcasts you've listened to in your time as being a Star Wars fan that you enjoy and that you want to talk about?
But I've sort of very few that I've sort of really dipped in and out of. But the one obviously that sort of brought yourself and myself together was obviously the Dorky Diva with Savannah and Brian, which was sort of what tickled my interest into doing a podcast because I enjoyed listening to their one. I have dipped in and out. Obviously, I've got to say, Jedi News's very own Radio 1138. That one I listen to quite a lot, partly because obviously I'm so involved with the behind the scenes side of it and good friends with both James and Steve, and obviously Kat and Mark and all the guys there. But yeah, no, it's something that it's finding the time, but it's the amount that there are out there is absolutely fantastic. And obviously, it's grown and grown, and the whole medium now, so that you can actually sit at home in front of your laptop and talk to the world about things that interest you, and then you can start interacting. Obviously, like with the Dorky Diva guys. Although I haven't been active for a long time on there, but I used to really enjoy the Discord group and getting to know the fans there and talking to different people, similar interests. And I found there it was a supportive community. So it's sort of like, it's not just giving out information about Star Wars or talking about your interests in Star Wars, but it's also getting to know the people that share that interest with you. And obviously, the internet's been a big part, and long may it go on.
I think some of my favourite Star Wars podcasts are obviously the Dorky Diva Show, as you mentioned, with Savannah and Brian. They've done all sorts. They were primarily a Star Wars podcast, and they even created their own Star Wars audio story
Yeah.
audio play, you could say, which they're working on a sequel to, which is fantastic. Obviously, The Adventures of the Zolan Dart. They've recently ventured out into recording other things, not just Star Wars, including Lord of the Rings or many other things, and I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to see what they do in this year, 2023. I think my favourite Star Wars podcast ever is Sky Talkers with Charlotte and Caitlin. I think the content they put out is superior to any other content that any other person puts out, bar none. They've had a great, fantastic year with sort of getting interviews with people lately, but even before they were getting that, 4 years before they were doing that, they were still producing great content about everything from a deep dive into George Lucas's life, specials into Yoda, specials into Obi-Wan Kenobi, reviewing all the new stuff coming out, novel reviews, all from a really not only a fun place, but also quite an intellectual place as well. So that's one of my favorites as well. So if anyone's listening in after other Star Wars podcasts listen to, I would say go check out Sky Talkers and go check out the Doty Diva Show, 100%. But no, that brings us, to our special episode. It is Star Wars Podcast Day. It is February 7th, 24 years since the first ever Star Wars podcast, Jedi Talk, was released. And we're just going to have a nice, easy episode, Jason.
Yeah, I like that.
Obviously, one of my favorite things is lists. So we're just going to talk about some of our top 5 of things in the Star Wars universe. So I'll shoot it over you, Jason. Who's your sort of top 5 main characters in all of Star Wars?
Yeah, I liked this one. So obviously, I think for me, number one for the main characters has got to be Obi-Wan, because it's more of, I think, because, as you know, I'm very much into the animated side, so I enjoy the journey that we go on with Obi-Wan and Anakin throughout the Clone Wars. But also, I was Alec Guinness, who originated the role. I absolutely loved that, the way he played it and everything. And then when they brought Ewan McGregor in and he took on the role, and he, to begin with, in Phantom Menace, was a lot younger. It was a completely different Obi-Wan. But by the time we got to um, Revenge of the Sith, um, yeah, it is Revenge of the Sith. I had to think for a second there. You've sort of got this character that's matured and it is heading towards the Alec Guinness role. And that's the one I think that always stuck with me. Then obviously, second for me had to be Luke Skywalker. Because one, again, I love Mark Hamill. Um, I did. I felt disappointed with the sequels that he wasn't in it as much. But unlike a lot of people, I didn't have an issue with what, especially Ryan Johnson, did with the character of Luke Skywalker. I could quite see, and from all the other different ideas, the idea of this, from what we got at the beginning of the original trilogy, we've got this character who was very young, earnest. He wanted to save the galaxy basically, and then by the end of it, he'd sort of seen himself fail and retreated, which I felt was actually quite a interesting way to go. Instead of us picking up where he was still the hero, obviously he'd fallen on his luck, and by the end of it, he made the ultimate sacrifice to be the hero again. So it was almost a redemption story, which sort of tied into the Anakin Skywalker story. So for me, Luke Skywalker went on that journey. The fact that we're now also getting little bits and pieces through The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, where you're seeing the younger or the Luke Skywalker between the originals and the sequels. I'm enjoying that, and I'm actually hoping that I've got no problem with the way that they were going, with having the likeness of Mark Hamill. And even, and I know Mark Hamill said, there are actors that could play a younger version of Luke Skywalker quite happily. And I don't think I get hung up so much about another actor playing a character, because that's what actors do, and the character is the way it's portrayed. Obviously, then another one of my main character, or my third main character, I think has got to be um, Anakin. I think then, again, not necessarily the Anakin that we saw in the prequel films. You know, there was hit and miss there, but then when we went into the Clone Wars and you saw the progression of the character and the manipulation by Palpatine, it was like you could see how this story happened, and for me then it made the story that we'd seen in the films a lot more realistic. So I think that's why, for me, Anakin then came in at number 3. My fourth one, I think, would probably be Han Solo, because he is just he's the rogue. Um, he's a hero. He pretend or he doesn't initially want to be the hero. He's a reluctant hero. But he has good in him, so that inevitably he is going to be the one that comes through for everyone. So yeah, I think number 4 for Han Solo is got to be Han Solo, and then number 5, I'm gonna go for Chewbacca, because for me, he is a main character. He's a character that shows throughout the films and other medium. He plays a part without having a voice, so to speak. It's more actions and mannerisms, and I think that makes him quite a powerful character. And he rushes in to protect everyone. And obviously he's got this past where he's been very downtrodden, and enslaved. And I think as a character, he's there all the way through, and obviously he keeps popping up in all the different mediums. He's been there almost as much as Yoda. So for me, he's one of my main characters in top 5.
Is that all your? So you've gone through 5 there, Jason?
I've gone through 5 there, Pete.
Spot on. I think I'm not going to name 5, but I think obviously one of mine is Ben Solo / Kylo Ren. I think one of the reasons why I love this character is he's a confused, angry man, radicalized by
Yeah,
powerful forces whispering in his ear. He's essentially the heir to generational trauma. And
yeah,
I think when you've got sort of the pressure of being the in the lineage of Skywalker,
yeah,
and then sort of you've got those angry forces sort of pulling you anyway, and you've got a bit of a dysfunctional family going on with your mum and your dad, and then you've got you go to Luke's school, and sort of the pressure's on you to be the best student there because of your bloodline. It's almost doomed to fail from the beginning. So I quite love that, and I love how the script and also Adam Driver's performance depicts that sort of pull and push from the light, and even after his darkest moments, the sort of that light still pulls at him, and almost brings him back through episode 7 and episode 8, and then obviously the end of episode 9 does pull him back. So Ben Solo Kylo Ren is definitely one of mine. I think you said Luke Skywalker again, just the hero's journey.
yeah,
This young lad who doesn't really know, he doesn't know his true parentage, doesn't really know much about his family's past, but knows that none of my shop arms not for him. Always looking to the horizon, always wanting to be involved, and then ends up, by the seat of his pants being involved. And we sort of see him go from this sort of young farm boy who doesn't really understand much to being the Last Jedi, and showing love to his father. Help him defeat the Emperor, defeat the Empire, bring about the New Republic, and then then look to rebuild the Jedi Order, which doesn't go too well. And then after all that good stuff he's done in the struggles, the one thing he's meant to do, rebuild the Jedi Order, sort of fails, and then that's when he sort of takes himself away from the world, almost as if
Yeah.
Maybe the world's better off without me. Who are we to think that we can just be here and help everything? But then in the end, gets called back in, and then, as we said, uses his best trick till last, able to transport himself across the galaxy, and obviously it takes up all his energy, and ultimately kills Luke Skywalker in his last defining moment against evil, which gives us hope with sort of the rebels of the Resistance escaping. Yeah, I think Luke Skywalker's fantastic as well. Going on from there, Jason, I want to know who your top 5 minor Star Wars characters are, background Star Wars characters are.
Yeah. The first one for me is my easiest one. He's my favourite, or one of my favourites in the animated series, and he's the one that I just want to appear in live action, and that's obviously my namesake, Hondo Anaka. Absolutely, I love him. He's just he's this rogue that you never know whether he's going to betray them or help them. 9 times out of 10, he's going to help them, but it's always going to be for his own means. So I do, yeah. Hondo Anaka's my favourite, like background character. Obviously, number 2. I was torn. Actually, I probably should have put this one, or this one would have been in one of my top 5, or would have been in the top 10 of main characters. But I do see him as sort of an assistant character, and that's got to be R2D2. But he is, even with just the beeps and the beeps, he is a character in himself. And he's also one of the characters that you've got all the way through the films, and plays a vital role. 3, then again, same to a certain degree, but obviously C3PO, again a character. Anthony Daniels would probably hate me for saying that he's a secondary character. He's very much part of the main team. So it's sort of difficult to bunch them in, but he's one of these characters that delivers a lot, and I think that was the one thing that I really did get out of the Rise of Skywalker, is that J.J. Abrams gave Anthony Daniels the chance to finally properly shine, and see the character of C3PO almost show him. Well, yeah, I would say show emotion, and he went from being this protocol droid to, in effect, being the savior and leading them through to where they needed to go. So yeah, that would be my third one. Number 4, I think, would be Mace Windu. Because he, for me, is, although isn't what I class as a main character, as a Jedi, he is one of the ones that there's a little bit more to him than just being a good guy or a bad guy. He sort of sits in the middle, and I think he partly embodies where the Jedi are almost going wrong. And that's why ultimately his story ends at the moment as it does. So he's one of the characters that I definitely picked there. And I think number 5, I'm trying to think of the one that I would probably go for here. I suppose, again, he should really be classed as a main character, but I'd say Yoda falls in at that point. Well, sorry, guys. Um, and yeah, he's the character that obviously delivers throughout the series, all the way through, and obviously he's now also part of the High Republic. So he's this continuity piece, and also embodies everything that is expected to be Jedi. But again, he also embodies where the Jedi Order has the potential to go wrong. But as a character, especially when you look at the early appearance in The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, where you've got a little bit of a more playful character, which I really enjoyed. And, Frank Oz just delivers a brilliant vocal performance there. So yeah, that's my 5, I think.
I think the droids are fantastic choice for you. And I would even class them as like they come together, don't they? They're like a tag team. So you don't get R2D2
Yeah.
without C-3PO. And I think if you look at one of the things I love about them is that if you take A New Hope, the first Star Wars movie, sort of they're thrown into that adventure just as the viewer is. So they're like they're all sort of narrators, and they feel what we're feeling. They get thrown into that adventure. The ship gets attacked, and they don't know what's going on. We see the ship get attacked, we don't know what's going on, and we see R2 get the plans and say where they're going with that. We're sort of with them every step of the way. So definitely R2D2 and C-3PO are huge for me. I think a Jedi who's huge for me is Plo Koon. He's on the Jedi Council. He's in the background. We get a bit more of him in the Clone Wars, but he's essentially a Jedi who sort of doesn't get too involved with the politics of the Senate. It's very much about being there with the Jedi, with the students, and then obviously sadly fighting in the war. We see that he has a very big influence on Ahsoka, who's perhaps one of the few sort of perfect Jedi left. As the Jedi Order collapses. So Plo Koon's up there for me, and then I also think another minor character who is awesome is Boba Fett. Maybe not so much a minor background character now with the series and stuff, but I think growing up and being a teenager and having Star Wars, you knew he was sort of badass. You didn't know much about him though. You didn't know what his face looked like, until we got the prequels. But I think just that allure of mysteriousness and sort of that killer look, just a coolness, is a big one for me on him. Next one, Jason, have you got your top 5 vehicles? So this can include both spaceships, speeders, land vehicles, anything that's mechanic that moves, essentially, in Star Wars.
Yeah, this one quite easy for me. Number 1 is Millennium Falcon. That is just the centerpiece for me of the Star Wars galaxy. A ship it's almost become a character in itself, because it's that well known. And it's just, you see it and you think there it is going into battle and that, but then it's also falling to pieces at the same time, and you've got Han and Chewie rebuilding it as they go, and then later obviously you've got Finn and Rey doing very similar sort of things, and the ship just delivers that grittiness to show that it's not this sparkling piece of equipment. It's fallen to pieces, it's seen a past, and it's got a story to tell. My second one there is after that has got to be, and I'm going to call it by the name it's supposed to be known as, which is Slave One. And again, I just think the design that they came up with for that, the whole concept of Slave One for Boba's ship, what they've done with it, and then like more that we saw of it with the TV series, the Book of Boba Fett. The more I saw, the more I was like, I love this ship, and I think it's a real big part of the Star Wars galaxy. Then my third one is again another ship that to me has almost its own body and is a character in itself, and that's got to be the Ghost from Rebels. I'm a huge Rebels fan, but I like the fact that it's a different design. It looks different to what we'd expect from, obviously the previous films and animation. But it's still very Star Wars like. And I like the fact that you've then got the Phantom that attaches to it. And obviously you've got Phantom 1 and Phantom 2, which they acquired over the time. Just absolutely love those. And obviously being a huge Lego fan, it is my pride and joy of my Lego collection. And I really, really, if they ever did a UCS version of the Ghost, then I would sell parts of my body to make sure that I could have that shit. Number 4, I'm gonna go for. Actually, I'm gonna go again because it's part of the Star Wars Rebels, which is Rex's ATTT. But obviously any of the walkers from the series, from the films, but that one in particular because of the way it's been modified almost as a walking fortress or a walking home. But the idea of having these walking war machines as opposed to the usual tanks, cars, and that sort of thing, I just thought it was something unique that, again, it was given the machines a a animalistic look that hadn't been seen before in sort of sci-fi sort of things. So yeah, any of the walkers, but for me also Rex's ATTE, I think it is, isn't it? And then number 5, I think I'm going to go for Luke's land speeder, because that's just sort of the thing. You see it and you think, actually, I could imagine us zooming around in one of those sort of things one day. And it's almost like a hovercraft, so we've sort of got something like it. But yeah, that for me and the design, the way it looked like it could be a car, but it certainly wasn't. And yeah, I just love that from the Star Wars galaxy.
I think mine would be, definitely the Millennium Falcon's up there. As you said, for all the reasons you said. It's almost a character in itself. It's our hero's refuge. It's our hero's savior. Doesn't always behave itself. Sometimes it's breaking down. It's damaged. It's very much lived in. They fix it as they go, modify it as they go. But whenever the cards are down, it always comes up trumps and gets them out of there, which is awesome. I think the walkers, like the AT-AT, is absolutely, that is what sort of, as a kid when you're watching Star Wars, makes it jump out at you. I think for me, seeing the AT-ATs, the walkers on Hoth,
Yeah.
that's like nothing you've seen before in any war movie or, in real life or sci-fi or fiction.
Yeah.
It's captivating and grabs you. The same with the chicken walkers, the ATSTs that you've got, the some on Hoth, but we see them mainly in action in Return of the Jedi on Endor, and just the way they walk and they're quite menacing and fast the way they move. But then we also see them, quite funny when the Ewoks get them to sort of be wobbly over things. That's really really good. So yeah, sort of they're really big ones for me. And then another huge one for me is Jabba's sail barge. I think
Yeah.
it's like an old luxury sort of sail liner that's sort of fell into ruin, is very old, and then this gangster's now got it, and it's probably the pride and joy of his collection. But he uses it to drive around the desert and live in luxury, shall we say, while he watches people die, or probably uses it to go and watch pod races as well. But the sail barge and just how there's a different side of Jabba's palace, which was really really good. So yeah, they're sort of the vehicles that stand out. And then I remember when the Stap which is the sort of the Trade Federation one droid sort of speeder bike came out. And I remember getting the figure
Yeah.
before Phantom Menace came out. I didn't actually get it. My friend Jonathan had the figure. I didn't have it, but I used to play with it at his. And I remember that just like getting us really, really hyped for the Phantom Menace coming. I don't know why, but it just did. So sort of the stab comes in there as well for me, the Trade Federation stab.
Yeah.
Moving on from that, Jason, is there 5 people who aren't or haven't been involved in Star Wars, but who you want to be in the future? Could be obviously actors, writers, directors.
Yeah, and this one, you set me a challenge here. One of the first ones, I was trying to think of directors, and it's almost. I know it sounds stupid, but I'd almost like Spielberg to do something.
That's not stupid,
Um,
mate. I think that's like the dream, isn't it?
yeah. It's well, saying that Spielberg over the last few years hasn't completely caught my magic, but no, I do. Spielberg, I think if he worked on something, probably I'd quite like to see him doing a story involving Luke Skywalker. I think that would be one of the ultimate ones, because it's just his way of telling stories is very similar to George Lucas. Another one, I don't know, an actor that I'd quite like to see, and it's probably seem quite strange, is Nick Cage as a Jedi or something like that, or a dark Jedi. There's something about Nicolas Cage that his films, they're not always the greatest, but him as an actor really can bring comedy and menace together.
He is an
And I
Academy
think,
Award winner.
yeah, well, yeah, no, I know he is, and exactly. Some of the films he does, I quite enjoy. It's like I loved the original National Treasure films, and obviously the new series that they've done without Nicolas Cage has been absolutely brilliant. So he could almost be a treasure hunter sort of thing. So it could be anything, but I think he could bring something different to Star Wars. Another. Now this is one that, strictly speaking, she's already been involved, because she, I think she was the seventh sister, was Sarah Michelle Gellar. But I'd love to see her in live
Void,
action stuff.
Void, already been involved.
Pardon?
Already been
No, am I not
involved.
allowed
You
that
cannot
one?
cheat, Jason. That is the path to the dark side, is cheating.
Oh, I just right. What one else can I come up with? Tommy Lee Jones. He's an actor. Doesn't do so much now, but I could see him doing almost again a Jedi sort of thing, but more curmudgeony, bit like Mark Hamill in The Last Jedi. And he's an actor, and obviously he's worked with Harrison Ford before, and he's one of these actors that can play off of other actors quite well. So I'd quite like him in it in some way. And Robert Downey Jr. But I'm not sure how he'd fit into it. But he's just one of those actors that, for me, is he plays quirky characters, and I think sometimes Star Wars could do with a few quirky characters. So yeah, that would be one actor that I'd quite like to see do something. I think I've done 5 there, haven't I?
Good choices, good choices. I think mine would be, I would love Quentin Tarantino to come and write and direct a sort of almost a
Yeah,
tale from Jabba's palace type of thing. And imagine you've got these characters who sort of are all going to Jabba's palace or the cantina or whatever for different
yeah,
reasons, different stories, and then how it all intertwines into chaos. I think that would be absolutely fantastic. I know, Quentin's got one movie left. If he said he's only going to direct 10, he's done 9. Um, I think he's probably not going to do a Star Wars, but for me, I would love to see him, as I said, write and direct a sort of a Tales from Jabba's Palace, a underworld, gritty type of comedy,
Yeah,
slash thriller, where again, as I said, you've got these sort of different groups of people, different characters arriving, whether it be Jabba's Palace, whether it be a cantina, something like that, and then how those stories intertwine, and then how chaos erupts would be awesome. I think you said Steven Spielberg. I think Steven Spielberg, in my opinion, the master of his craft, the greatest shot-for-shot director of all time. He does comedies, he does disaster movies, he does sci-fi, he does fairy tales, he does sort of true events. He does musicals.
yeah,
The man doesn't
it-
have a genre. He's very much the master of his craft. So I think Spielberg doing whatever Spielberg wanted to do for me would be absolutely fantastic. I think speaking of actors, I would love to see Viggo Mortensen, obviously from Lord of the Rings, who played Aragorn. I think he would be fantastic. I think he's so good. He could be
yeah,
everything from he could be sort of he could be a crazy Jedi Knight. He could be a really evil crime lord. He could be a high up Imperial Moff officer on the ISB. He could sort of play it all. If you watch him in Aragorn, he's the perfect good guy. But if you watch him in
yeah,
some of the movies with David Cronenberg, where it's a history of violence and things like that, and you sort of see in Eastern Promises, you see that sort of that different side to him, where he's still likable, but he's very much got that edge. Where he could pull off sort of these sinister roles. So Viggo Mortensen's one for me. I think female acting wise, I think someone who's doing fantastic right now is, and I've forgotten her name, believe it or not, Florence Pugh. Sorry, there we go. Remember her name.
yes,
Yeah, I think
yeah,
she's been fantastic at the minute. Again, can do that. Could be the sort of the funny half good guy, half bad guy in the Marvel movies. But we've also seen her, just being some real art house stuff, putting in really really good performances. Again, she could be anyone from a handmaiden to a Jedi to she could be a young becoming Imperial officer. I think Florence Pugh would be fantastic as well.
yeah,
So yeah, they're sort of my people who I've gone with there. I know you probably haven't got 5 for these ones, Jason. So just what's some of your favourite Star Wars stories not told on television or on the movie screen, sort of in books and comics? Have you got a couple of favourite
yeah.
ones?
Um, Obviously, for me, I love the Doctor Aphra comic books. I think the quirkiness of the characters. I can never remember the 2 evil droids that she has in the early series of the comics, but they were absolutely brilliantly, and it was such a complete turnaround from obviously R2D2 and C3PO. Just very cleverly done. The stories linked in, and again, it was almost bringing in the archaeology side of it. So you've almost got a tinge of Indiana Jones mixed with Star Wars. For me, those books or comic books were absolutely brilliant. So I really enjoyed those. The other ones that I loved reading the novelizations of all of the films. I went, especially with the prequels. I don't know if you can remember, but obviously when the prequels came out, quite often the books came out at exactly the same time as the film. And I probably did the most sacrilege thing out that quite often I read the novelization of the film before I went and saw the film. I know I certainly did that with Attack of the Clones, and I think in some ways that egged on my enjoyment of the film more than it gave me a little bit of anticipation for what was coming in the film. And I found myself, because inevitably there was a lot of stuff that was in the books that weren't in the films. So I came searching then to see and I think I played them out in my mind myself. So I used to quite enjoy that actually happening. Um, does it have to be storybooks, or can I also talk about some of the more like the information books?
I think let's finish up with the canon, the stories, and then we can go to that after.
Yeah, yeah. So also, oh, what was the most recent one I really enjoyed? Trying to think which one it was. I've probably been more traditional in the older generation, and it was the story. No, it's completely slipped me now.
Just
Sorry.
describe it. I mean,
That's
no. Describe it
that's
for us.
the
Don't
main
mind.
one. Yep. So yeah, I think that's mainly with me the main stuff. Oh, and also the Darth Vader comic book original, the first sort of Marvel run with Charles Soule, when it started, and also no, I just suddenly remembered. Then that was the other one I wanted to say. The Tales from Vader's Castle and that series of books that Cavan Scott produced for Halloween for I think it was 3 years on the trot. Those were very clever, very dark, different to what you'd expect, but still Star Wars.
Awesome. I think some of mine would be, I think Lost Stars, which sort of tells the story of the original trilogy, sort of through the eyes of two children who are, one's rich, one's poor. Both end up going off the Imperial Academy. One becomes a rebel, one stays in the Empire, and essentially shows you their journey, the original trilogy through their eyes, and also takes you up to the Battle of Jakku to sort of set up the Force Awakens. 100% recommended that by Claudia Gray. Great book, Lost Stars. I think the High Republic. I'm sort of a bit behind and all over with it, but the books I've read, I love. The reason why I'm all over with it is because I'm in the middle of renovating a house at the minute, so I don't have a home. But once that house is built and I moved in and I've got my library how I want it, finishing the High Republic is going to be, or getting up to date with it even, is going to be the biggest thing for me because the High Republic's fantastic. It's Tales of the Jedi from a golden era. They haven't started to fall yet. The sort of the cancer the rock hasn't set into the Jedi Order yet, or so it seems. And the galaxy is this sort of this wide open wild west of fun. So I just recommend the High Republic. I think comics wise, I loved the Rise of Kylo Ren story, which was by Charles Soule, I believe. Sort of ties in Ben Solo's sort of leaving Luke's castle and sort of going to join the Knights of Ren, and Snoke being in his ear, and it's, again, just a great story. I'm also enjoying. I'm currently reading at the minute Shadows of the Sith, which is sort of a tie-in book to The Rise of Skywalker, sort of showing you Luke and Lando's journey to find Ochi Bestoon. A lot of cool sort of Sith and Jedi lore being told in that book. We also get to see Luke and Lars Antekka become friends there. And I also love the Poe Dameron comic book series. I think it went for 4 volumes, which sort of, tied in Black Squadron. Poe deals with Poe looking for why he was looking for Lars Antekka at the beginning of Force Awakens. And it also ties into sort of what happens next for Black Squadron after the events of the Force Awakens as well. But I think that's the main canon storylines I've really loved. One book that was fantastic though is a Rogue One novel, Catalyst, which is essentially a tie-in novel to the Rogue One movie. So it starts during the Clone Wars and it shows you Galen Erso and Director Krennic's sort of relationship, the sort of two young men in the Clone Wars, and how that develops into the Empire, into the Imperial era, and then sort of how Galen gets involved with the Death Star project, and then also how that ends. And it makes that first scene when you watch Rogue One and Krennic turns up, and he talks about being a farmer and Lyra being dead, all that stuff. Sort of it pops more when you've read Catalyst. So I 100% recommend reading a Rogue One novel, Catalyst, and then watching Rogue One after you finish it, and you'll really enjoy that as a sort of a double head-up story, 100%. Jason, you want to talk about some non-canon books, the more the encyclopedias and the art books and stuff. So go ahead, bud.
Yeah. My all-time favourite, which I received as a gift for my 40th, is the art of Star Wars Rebels, and I got the special edition with the opening box with the lightsabers. So as you open the box, the lightsabers light up and you get the shoom as they come up, sort of thing. and then you've got a piece of artwork in there, and then you've got the book that is absolutely beautiful. And being a Rebels fan, it was my grail piece that I had to own. So I would say it's one of those ones that if you get the chance to get it, get it. It's worth every penny. So yeah, that one. I've also been enjoying series. Just trying to remember the name. Because I've just recently got the Secrets of the Bounty Hunters, which is an amazing one. Because it's told by Hondo and Arca. And you've got all these little pull-out pieces that tell you about different bounty hunters, and you've got like Hondo's card for his membership to the Bounty Hunters Guild, and all these little bits. And obviously, they did uh, the Sith version and the Jedi version previously, and they're books that they're not necessarily full of spoilers. They're just fun books to be able to look through, explore the world of Star Wars, and also they've got these little extra bits throughout them. So yeah, I really enjoyed those ones. And just any of the encyclopedias, actually, some of them are full of little gems, and the artwork that you get from the films is something that sadly I used to collect. I think I had all of the ones from the prequels, but then when we moved house at one point, my ex-wife sadly threw most of them away, and I've wanted to replace them, but I haven't managed to get round to it yet. But those books, I've always been a fan of behind the scenes books, and there's been some absolutely brilliant ones, normally done by the likes of DK Media and that sort of thing. And obviously, I think the Secrets of the Bounty Hunter and all of that sort of thing is done by Insight Editions. So there's another sort of side to the literature that's actually quite fun to look at, and that you might not necessarily come across, because you might look at it and think, "Oh, that's for kids, really."
Yeah, I think one of my favorite ones is the art of the Last Jedi. Some of the concept art that was developed for that movie is
Yeah,
eye watering. Another few of mine, I've got the Star Wars Archives, so sort of the Volume 1, which deals with the original trilogy, and then Volume 2, which deals with the prequel trilogy, is pretty cool. I recommend picking those up. I've got the smaller versions, so sort of the slightly cheaper, still really awesome quality, awesome stuff, but then you can get the larger sort of coffee table editions that are also fantastic. One set of books I do want that I can't afford right now is the sort of the history of Ralph McQuarrie's art. It's like it's in 2 volumes. Concept art for Star Wars, which
yeah.
they're a couple of £100 a pop, but they look fantastic. Maybe one day. But yeah, there's a lot of different choices out there if you are interested in that type of thing. I think that sort of wraps up the things I wanted to talk about today, Jason. Anything you want to add?
No, I think it's sort of been a look at the sort of different bits that we've got that we can enjoy of Star Wars. And asking to pick 5 main characters and 5 background characters. As I was reading out the names that I picked, I was suddenly hating myself for not picking 20 others. And I think that's the vastness of Star Wars, and why so many of us can actually do podcasts to talk about it, is because there's infinite ways that you can go. And that's what part of the fun. Which is obviously why I'm really looking forward to Celebration next.
Yeah, and also where will people find you at Celebration, Jason?
Yeah, well, I'm obviously going to be exploring the place, hopefully with yourself, Pete, and obviously also I'll be hopefully helping out with the guys on the Jedi News booth, which, as I understand, it's going to be hopefully with the UKG guys and all the other different groups. This is my first ever time at Celebration. I think it was 4 years ago that I did my first, maybe even 5 years ago, I did my first MCM Comic Con in Birmingham, which is where I really got the love for it. And I was lucky enough there to be working with James and Steve and alongside the UKG and Rebel Legion, doing a stand. We had a little stand there, and I ended up spending a morning building the Lego. I think it was their Sand Speeder that they released as a kit, which Lego kindly donated to us to build on the stand so that people could just come and watch me building Lego, which was the perfect day for me. And then James ended up building the UCS Hulkbuster kit that again had been donated by Lego. So I'm looking forward to when we get up to Celebration, exploring what's on offer up there, but getting to meet more people to do with Star Wars, catch up with friends, a lot of the guys from the Mando Mercs I want to catch up with, droid builders. There's so many different groups, and also guys that are coming over from America. I'm definitely hoping that I'm going to get to meet up with Savannah and Brian, to actually meet the people that I've been listening to, and that for me is just going to be a great atmosphere, which is something I'm really looking forward to.
Definitely. Well, that brings end to the episode. So again, just want to say thank you everybody for listening. It really does mean a lot. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave us a top review. Only takes you a few moments, but it makes us smile forever. Also helps people find the podcast a lot more easier. If you're listening on a podcast provider that's not Apple Podcast or Spotify, but it does give you an opportunity to leave a rating, just again, please leave a top rating. Again, as I said, it makes our day, and it also allows us to sort of get found by other people. You can follow me on social media at Geordie Jedi Pete. That is on Twitter and Instagram. And you can find the podcast on Twitter at Boars Star. And you can find the podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Star Wars Podcast. This has been our Star Wars Podcast Day special. We hope you've enjoyed listening to the show. Again, as I said, some awesome other Star Wars podcasts out there. There's loads. Two of my favourites are the Dorky Diva Show and Sky Talkers. Go check those out. Thank you very much for listening. May the force be with you all. And remember, always tell that to Kanja Club.
Hello, Star Wars listeners. This is Savannah Odit. You might know me as host of The Dorky Diva Show with my co-host Brian Balance. I am also producer of The Adventures of the Zolan Dart, which is a Star Wars-inspired audio drama that we produced over the last year. If you love stories about smugglers, courage, heroic characters, and maybe a few foes along the way, you should go to thedorkydivashow.com and listen to The Adventures of the Zolan Dart today.
Shout! We've got your pigs.
Were any of the critters harmed?
What did you do now?
I didn't do anything. I just freaked out for no reason.
It was nice doing business with you again. Maybe next time we could deliver something less temperamental.
Now, what you call temperamental, I call fun.
Hey, is there a place nearby where I can make some repairs?
3 clicks south of here, you'll find a small spaceport. They should have what you need, as long as it's nothing too big.
Dynamic class? My stars, you don't hear about many of those still being space-worthy.
It's been in my family for a while.
She's pretty great. Any chance you have a hover cart we can use to load up?
I'll check out the HoloNet to see if anything new has come up in the sector.
My name is Sereth Khan. I am the chief here on Kamai. My people and I have been experiencing food shortages as of late due to unforeseen natural occurrences. We are looking to hire someone.
I say we take this one. The pay is great, and it's the type of job we're familiar with.
Welcome. You must be Captain Otoa. I've already sent word to Pac 2 to expect you in the next cycle or so.
You told him we were coming before we even accepted the job. That's rather presumptuous, isn't it?
Perhaps, though, once I received confirmation that you were interested and on your way here, I couldn't help but hope.
Fair enough. Well, we'll be back as soon as we can.
Well, that's not good.
Is that blaster fire I hear?
Ah, so you're the one.
Captain, it sounds like they want to do this the hard way.
I love when they got some fight in them.
This is bad. This is bad. We're about to have a lot of company.
I'll see you soon.